Here is one of Kamala's people, because she never talks. So.
President Harris's leadership as coming in to take over the top of this ticket and how she kept this team together. Because at the end of the day, we're all united behind one common goal, and that is to make sure that Donald Trump does not get anywhere in power. But
that's it. Make sure Donald Trump doesn't get any more power. Eli Lake, he said, this is important to understand our current moment when a class of people believes that a single political opponent represents the end of democracy. And we define democracy two different ways in the opening segment. But if your opponent represents the end of democracy, it puts in motion a new set of political norms. Oh, by the way, that's actually, now that I think about it, that segment we did about democracy, that part of the segment was super, super important. There's two different definitions of democracy. When you and I hear democracy, we think everyone votes, and then you count the votes, and then there's a winner. That's democracy. That's not how a lot of people view democracy. The people who talk about the end of democracy, they don't view it as voting, and that's not it. To them, democracy is post-World War II institutions. So NATO, the UN, NAFTA, it's all these big globalist world order things that exist after World War II, and that we can't question. It's all set up perfectly to do certain things that it does, and don't question anything. Certainly don't eliminate any of it, like the International Criminal Court. Don't question that. Leave it there. And Trump put sanctions on it, so we can't have it, right? That's what, to them, that's democracy. So when you think, to Eli Lake, when a class of people believes that a single political opponent represents the end of democracy, you and I hear that, we're like, end of democracy? Like, what do you mean? Trump wants to strengthen the vote. He wants voter ID. He wants, one-day voting. He wants paper ballot. We don't. It doesn't make any sense. End of democracy. But when you realize, what they mean is Trump is the end of this current world order of institutions that have been around for decades that are maybe no longer serving the American people, but benefits certain people. When they don't want an end to that, which they call democracy, oh, okay, well, yeah, that makes sense. Then why they actually hate him a lot. But what does that do? Eli Lake, it puts in motion a new set of political norms. That's the problem. Up to and including shooting someone in the face or head. I don't know. Is your ear your face? I don't think it's your face. So shooting someone in the head. Politico already laying the groundwork for Kamala to lose. We've talked about this a lot. The nation's best hackers found vulnerabilities in voting machines. Oh, good. Whew. I'm glad they found it. We can fix it, right? But no time to fix them. Oh, great. Super. Why are you telling us then, Politico? And then we got a sneak peek from the New York Times as well. The Constitution is sacred. Is it also dangerous? Well, then you don't think it's sacred. So they talk about how the Constitution is a problem. And they do this, they do a couple paragraphs of the Constitution's great and all, but, and then that's the main problem. And they say that the point of their argument is that the Constitution is anti-democracy because of the Electoral College. And I'm reading this article and I'm like, what in the world is this? What is this article? And it's about the dean of the Berkeley Law School, Chemerinsky. Back in 2018, the dean of Berkeley's law school still seemed to place considerable faith in the Constitution. But now, the Constitution has put the country in grave danger. He lays out what would need to happen for a new constitutional convention. And in the book's more somber moments, entertains the possibility of secession. West Coast states may form a nation called Pacifica. Red states might form their own country. He hopes that any divorce, if it comes, will be peaceful. Chemerinsky's far from alone. The argument that what ails the country's politics isn't simply the president or Congress or the Supreme Court, but the founding document that presides over all three has been gaining traction, especially among liberals. Books and op-eds critiquing the Constitution have proliferated. By the way, I'd like to come on the record that the Constitution is not the problem at all. There are parts of the Constitution that's a problem, but those are only the parts that have been added after, like the direct election of senators being one of those, and the income tax being another one. Books and op-eds critiquing the Constitution have proliferated. Scholars are arguing that the Constitution has incentivized tyranny of the minority. Wow, this is great. So we don't live in a democracy, we live in a republic, and the point of the republic is to protect the minority. And they call that the tyranny of the minority. The anguish is, in some sense, a flip side of veneration. Americans have long assumed that the Constitution could save us, but a growing chorus now wonders whether we would need to be saved from it. So his argument against the Constitution. Here's why the Constitution's bad. The authors of it were all white men. That's it. It has parts in it about slavery. Therefore, it's bad. It has the stain of America's original sin in it. Therefore, all of it's bad. Now, of course, it didn't protect slavery. It actually ended slavery. The Constitution outlined the end of slavery. It said that you cannot prohibit the importation of slaves for the next 20 years. And you know what happened on 20 years to the day? Thomas Jefferson ended the importation of slaves. So it didn't protect slavery. It noted a time to end slavery. This guy, the dean of the Berkeley Law School, also cites the Three-Fifth Compromise. Oh, the Three-Fifths Compromise, that's proof that the founders thought black people were not a whole person. No, you fool. The slave states wanted slaves to count as a whole person because this was what went towards congressional representation. They wanted slaves to count as a whole person. It was the anti-slave states who said, no, we don't want slaves to count as congressional representation because we want more congressional representation because we want to end slavery. So they came up with the Three-Fifths Compromise, which was better. The alternative would have been we count a slave as a whole person, and in the southern states, the slave states would have gotten more votes, and it would have been harder to end slavery. You absolute fools. And he knows this. He's the dean of the Berkeley Law School. He's no idiot. He's no dummy. But you can still be a fool. So this is interesting. This guy is saying, and the people on the left, New York Times, saying that the Constitution is terrible. It's dangerous. It's bad. It's wicked. It's sinful. It's at its core racist. And Donald Trump is a threat to the Constitution. Have you heard that? How about that? But how can those two things be? Got it? Trump is a threat to the Constitution. Also, the Constitution is dangerous and we got to get rid of it. And then the dean of the Berkeley Law School says that 2 senators per state is a terrible thing. Because you got 50 Democrat senators, you got 50 Republican senators, but the Democrat senators represent way more people. Therefore, it's undemocratic. But again, it was never supposed to be that way. That's not how our founders designed it. You progressives are the ones who screwed that up with the 17th Amendment. You guys changed it. The senators used to be appointed by the state legislators, not directly elected by people. There was a purpose for the founders doing that. And you, in your infinite wisdom, changed that with the 17th Amendment. You guys screwed that up, not the founders. You did. And then he goes on and talks about the popular vote. There's no such thing as the popular vote. You're going to hear more and more people talk about the popular vote coming up. Tell them there's no such thing. That doesn't exist. I think the example I gave yesterday was that's like talking about the tall vote or the blonde vote. It's just not a thing. There's no tall vote. Well, Donald Trump won the tall vote. There's no tall vote. There's no vote, like separate vote for people who are over 6 feet tall. It's not a thing. It doesn't exist. There's no popular vote. There's no thing. It's a totally made up thing. There's no popular vote. But they're talking about the Electoral College. And to Nolte's point, that's their long game, is to get rid of that ultimately, of course. But listen, we can do this all day. The point is, they believe the Constitution is dangerous. Dangerous. And they think Donald Trump is dangerous as well. Not just someone they disagree with. Listen, here's this person. Here's that again.
We're all united behind one common goal, and that is to make sure that Donald Trump does not get anywhere in power. But
what lengths will they go to make sure that that man never gets anywhere near the Oval Office ever again? That is the question. And sort of to answer Steve's question, we'll find a lot on Tuesday. We'll find out a lot. And if Trump wins decisively on Tuesday, we'll start to see the lengths that the left will go. Right now, Kamala's polling is heading in a downward trajectory for her. They're not happy, but it's still kind of, like, they can still kind of do their thing. But we'll see after this debate if Trump wins conclusively and their polls plummet like they did. Like, if Kamala's polls plummet like they did with Biden, listen, you saw the panic last month, but there was a way out. They went with Kamala. What happens if there's no more way out for them? Then what do they do? That's what we will find out very soon.